drafted in November of '61. Actually, after the first 24 hours, there was no feeling. We didn't get any sleep for 3 days, but we were ready. My track commander was pretty nervous, and that was about it. He was nervous, and I don't think he was married neither. He was an E6, which means stripes with a couple bars underneath, a bar underneath. And the rest of us were pretty well determined to do what we had to do. Well, I took basic in Fort Carson, Colorado for 8 weeks, and then it was sent to the 1st Armored Division. We took our T&E training there, and then during the Cuban Missile Crisis, with 3 days we loaded up ammo and everything, and loaded up our tanks on rail cars, and were sent to Fort Stewart, Georgia. We spent, I don't know how many weeks there, 6 or 7 weeks there, and they decided it was all over with, so they took some of the equipment from the troops in Fort Stewart and left our tanks were on the train yet, and took us down to Fort Lauderdale and took us out on an LST for an amphib training on a small island, just unboarded on a pontoon bridge, and circled back and went on to the LST and went back to Fort Stewart, and a week or so later they sent us back to Fort Hood, Texas. Was Forward Direction Center track driver for our armored battalion. We supported 3 tank companies with 4 Deuce mortars.
Cool.
Good things, well, they had some, I call it like a US, it wasn't really put on by the USO, but they sent a couple of fellas there that out in the field on a flatbed trailer. They was, I think, who was the artist name? Cannot remember those artists' names that sang songs, from, they were popular artists, singing artists in those days. Well, setting up the aiming circles for the mortars to fire in support of our battalion. Tank companies. We pulled tank practice for the target practice for the tanks during their gunnery practice.
And this was for the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yes.
Potentially. Okay.
Well, we had to maintain the tracks. We had to make sure the oil levels are up, the water levels are up, track tensions, keep the oil in the differentials, and the transmissions especially. They leak. The ones I had leaked pretty bad until we went on the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we got new transmissions. So
yeah.
That was probably the best thing that ever happened to us. There was about 15,000 men in the 1st Armored Division. We had 3 line companies. Each line company had 5 tanks and 4 people to a tank. And we had 4 gun tracks, and there was 5 people per gun track. We had 3 people in my track, which was the TC, and myself, which I helped set up the gun tracks, the aiming circles, and made the corrections for the distance and direction of fire, and operated the radio, or if somebody was sick, helped load the guns or fire the guns. Got up, it was reveille at 5 o'clock in the morning, and chow hall, and then duties were passed out at reveille, whether you're going to be on KP or guard duty or motor pool guard or whatever. They were always listed, but told to you again. And then we were up to basically the motor pool, and squirted a shot of oil here and there in the tracks because he could only do it so many times.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there was a lot of times we had after reveille, we had police calls. We had to go pick up every little piece of paper and trim the grass. And of course, in Texas, there wasn't much grass to trim, so you used the scissors. Somebody got scissors, and some picked up the dead pieces of paper that had blown in from someplace. It wasn't too bad, except when we were in the field. Then it was K rations, and they were basically from. Well, some was even from the Second World War. Some was from the Korean conflict. Oh yes, we did form with some of the sergeants in our platoon. Some of the guys that I was in our barracks. I kept in contact with one, a couple of them, quite a while.
You still in contact now, or
no? They quit answering my letters. Stayed connected a little bit by the newspapers. My folks, I would write letters to them. They would send it back. In fact, they knew more about where we were leaving for the Cuban Missile Crisis before we did. I was pretty fortunate. I was home about a month, and I got a job from Terminal Electric in Minneapolis, a wholesale company. I spent 6 months there, and then this spring I went to got an appointment with the apprenticeship committee and met with them, and got hired out as an apprentice electrician, and so it was fairly easy for us in those years.
yeah.
No, I think I would have stayed with the Army. My brother was in the Army. My father was an ex-Marine, but just kind of like the Army. My brother was in the Korean conflict, and he got up to the front lines just a couple of days before the truce was signed. He was a lineman and strung telephone wires on a telephone post for communications. Fun times were pulling targets for the tank gunnery. Go out at night, and they would bring all the food out that the two of us wanted all night long, and a few beverages. One of the good times I do remember was we had a Sergeant Davis in our company. He was a forward observer, and he had been in the Second World War, and I think he had been out in Murphy's platoon sergeant. And when he retired, the commanding general of our division had to stand up, and our company commander came down and says, "Sergeant Davis, you will wear your bandoliers." And he says, "No, sir." He says, "You will wear your bandoliers, or I'll defer your retirement." "Yes, sir." And he had 2 bandoliers full of medals he had won between the Second World War and Korea. He was in both. And he had been a master sergeant major at one time. And he would laugh about it. He said, every time I went into Germany, I'd lose a stripe. He came out as a buck sergeant. And the commanding general had to salute him because he had the Medal of Honor. They had a parade, a special parade for him. Unbelievable, for a buck sergeant. He retired one grade pay level above me. We had one field problem where we lost a tank crew. They went under a simulated gas attack with enclosed. They were running on daylight with the periscopes, and they went over a ravine, and all 5 of them perished when the tank exploded when it hit the bottom. It burned up, and the burned for 3 days before they could finally get it cool enough to get them out. That was not good news. There wasn't too many bad times.
Yeah.
The bad times were AP.